Here and starting on John chapter 1, and it's really irrelevant. But um, so what I'm gonna do first is go ahead and read. We can read the entire, like um, all 18 verses, and then go ahead and start with our first discussion question. So if anybody wants to read those short 18 verses, feel free to do so.
In the beginning, the word already existed. The word was God created everything through him, and nothing was created except through him. The word gave life to everything that was created, and his life brought light to darkness. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. God said to man, John the Baptist, to tell about the light, so that everyone might believe because of his testimony. John himself was not the light; he was simply a witness to tell about the light. The one who is the true light, who gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He came into the very world he created, but the world didn't recognize him. He came to his own people, and even they rejected him. But to all who believed him and accepted him, he gave the right to become a child. He gave the right to become children of God. They are reborn, not with physical birth, resulting from the human passion or plan, but a birth that comes from God. So the Word became human and made his home among us. He was full of unfailing love and faithfulness, and we have seen his glory, the glory of the Father's one and only Son. John testified about him when he shouted to the crowd, "This is the one I was talking about when I said, 'Someone is coming after me who is far greater than I am, for he existed long before me.'" From his abundance we have all received one gracious blessing after another. For the law was given through Moses, but God's unfailing love and faithfulness came through Christ Jesus. No one has ever seen God, but the unique one, who is himself God, is near to the Father's heart. He has revealed God to us.
Amen. So our first excuse me, first question open up for discussion is, what do you think John meant when he called Jesus the Word?
Um, when I thought about it, I thought about him calling him the Word because it's like fulfilled prophecy from the Old Testament when Jesus is talked about multiple times in the Old Testament, and like basically like he's the Word, so like it's that prophecy coming back.
I put that also. I think he was referencing like Genesis 1, where it says, if you think about the first four, it says, "In the beginning, God." And the when it talks about, it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God." So if he's talking about the Word, Jesus was the Word that was with God and was God, and he's all that. So that's the reference.
But he sent his word in the form of Jesus.
Pretty much got the same thing that traded from it. Just all the prophecies, whether it be the major prophets, or even going even further back into like the earlier scriptures, just how Jesus was always uh, referenced, not as Jesus, but they always alluded to the coming King or the Lamb or some kind of reference to him. So it's a prophetic fulfillment of that.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Similar to me, it's like he has always existed before being born to Mary. Um, before Earth, he was with God. He was God.
Yeah. I guess it ain't much to add on to that. I'm saying thing. Um, in John chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, what things is John declared to be true of the Word, and why is each one of these facts significant?
The first one was in the beginning, Jesus was there. I think the significance is kind of showing that, kind of like you just alluded to, like he existed before Mary, like he was with God. He wasn't here, but and so I think that was the importance of that one. It says the Word was with God, and so again, he was with God before he came down, and then the Word was God, and just kind of goes with the Trinity, how they're three in one there, but they are one together as a whole.
It makes me think of the song "I Am." Um, the importance of all of those things, where it's like he's all seeing, all knowing, and almighty. And those three things is like, kind of showing how he was, uh, those three omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient. He's always been. So it's like always being there and always knew everything. And he's always existed. So it's like just everything encompasses that. It's important that the fact that he was or is. So it says I am, always. There's no, past tense. So it's just always present tense. Kind of.
Anybody on the second part of that, like on verse 3, which says all things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made.
I was looking at it as God created everything in the means of the Word. As he was, wow.
I just think it's crazy. Like every time you look at just things like all things are made, you think sometimes like on the excuse me, like on the computer screen it pops up like different every few days it changes the background setting, and it's like just places like all over the world, you know what I'm saying, and different views of different things, and it's just to think like, God made everything. Like you think about like the mountains, the oceans, all those things, and it's like just how powerful. I don't know if you stop and think about it enough, just like how powerful he is. Number 3. This passage includes several allusions to creation. It says, look at Hebrews chapter 1, verse 2, and then 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 6.
Hebrews 1:2 says, hath in these last days spoken unto us by his Son, whom he hath appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the worlds.
2 Corinthians 4:6.
Mm-hmm.
That reads, for God who said, let light shine out of darkness, made his light shine in our hearts, to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ.
Anybody care to share what they? I'm going to read those 2 verses. Like, what do you see?
I guess the obvious one is like creation. I mean, that he created everything, and that I guess it wasn't really in John, but in both 2 Corinthians 4:6 and in verse 3 of Hebrews chapter 1, like I just saw this part. It was like the sun radiates God's own glory and expresses the very character of God. It's like it made me think like light, like that's common to all of it. Like when you think of something radiating, it's usually like a lit lighting up the room or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I would put it.
For me, the biggest thing I take, especially from the Second Corinthians passage, is I think it all kind of intertwines itself, kind of coming back to the central thing of God and the Son and the Holy Spirit being one. But it talks about, it says, for God who said, let light shine in darkness. So he's referring to, in the scripture references, Genesis 1:3 from my Bible, and says, made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory. And so I kind of think of it like as a parallel, and it's kind of paralleling how there was nothing before God spoke light into the
Just
world,
darkness.
and that's when there was creation. And then kind of thinking how, Jesus was spoken. He was the light spoken into us, and how that our relationship and our new lives have been created at that point. So I kind of see like a parallel
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
with God and Jesus, kind of just showing how intertwined they are. I think that was the biggest thing just throughout the whole verses, just seeing just how many things, when you really look at it, just how intertwined God is. Even when you go back to the Old Testament and you look at the stuff Jesus does, and they're in one in unison. I think just kind of like seeing like that's like that should be our goal, is to get in that same line and try and make it match up. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I guess you might answer the number 4 kind of already. Degree. Number 4 says, what do the symbols of life and light tell us about Jesus, and how have you brought these qualities into your life?
I put that Jesus is that light that kind of guides us towards his gift of salvation. So it's his light that shines through us to be able to share that same light with the dark world around us, allowing them to have a hope of a savior, or to see see the hope of a savior.
And I would do the same thing, similar to like looking at the light as a spiritual light. Shows us what we really are like. The wrong in us, and Jesus is the light to show us how to do and how we ought to follow him.
Yeah, it makes me think about like, that's kind of like what you both saying, but like, he tells us like, we're the light of the world, just to let our light shine for men so they could see, and it's like, I don't know, you think about how many things you see, and I don't know if we talked about it last week or maybe on Sunday, like you see so much darkness and wickedness and stuff going on, and as a believer, I say this, what he placed inside of us should make us, wherever we go, whether it's in like if you're in an environment at work, where there's some darkness there or whatever it is, he placed us there not to become part of that, but to be like, to shine light on that, to respond not like the world would respond to things, or you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can easily get caught up into being in an environment where you just kind of go along with the flow and what everybody's doing. If everybody's complaining, well, I don't complain. If everybody else is doing whatever, I'm gonna do it. But he puts us in a position to be able to shine that light, whether it's like I said, use work for an example, but school, community, wherever it is that we go.
I had a couple different, I guess, takeaways, or kind of just what his symbols tell us about Jesus. The first one, what kind of stood out to me the first time reading through is verse 8, where it says, he himself was not the light, referring to the man that was sent from God, whose name was Joghn. It says he himself was not the light, and so I think what that kind of tells us is it kind of shows us that whenever we are showing us things and we are being that example of Christ, it's not of ourselves. I think it's kind of like something that's in there to humble us, because it's like you can't be that light without the source, as you like to allude to. We can't shine without the true supplier of the light, which is
Right. You can't
which
shine
is
on your
Christ.
own.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And then I also thought about whenever you are going to in a room or when you're driving at night, it says symbols of life and light. And I thought think about how like it only takes one light to light up a good patch of road, or in a room it takes one light to light up an entire room. And I also kind of think about, like you said, is wide is the gate and narrow. And so it's like sometimes you're going to be the only light, but you don't understand that your impact of your one light
Greater than you think.
can help a lot of people that are around. And just kind of thought about how like life and light go together. Whenever your light bulb is dead, there's no light that is emitting from it. It's there,
No
but
power.
with no life, it does no good. So it's kind of related to that too. I kind of see it as kind of going back to the original. It's like we're the bulb, but if we're lifeless,
Plugged
if
in.
we're not plugged in, then
He
it
can.
doesn't matter what you do with the switch. There's no light emitted, and we're not serving our purpose.
To add to your shine part, the fact that it's not us shining, it made me think of, and here I am with my little, it made me think of us as the moon. The moon can't shine by itself. It's reflecting the sun's light. So we need to be the moon, for the world to see the Christ through us, because they don't see us, they see him.
I was thinking that, but I forgot it.
You were saying,
When you were talking, I was saving that one up. I know I'm gonna forget something. That's my twin.
that's your thing? So, question number 5 says, who is the man sent from God? These obviously we know, but what did he come to do? If anybody cares to, you can read the verse again, or somebody wants to paraphrase that, or have anything extra to add to it.
The answer is in the scripture.
Verse 7.
It's too easy. That's why I said if anybody wanted to add other than to what was the obvious on that, but what do you think? I would say he could have chose anybody, and we don't know. Why do you specifically? Why do you think it was like he's in verse 6? He said it was a man sent from God, and that was John. I mean, you think what was it? Was there a particular reason that I guess God chose him?
Well, the connection, the fact that his mom, Elizabeth,
Elizabeth.
she had been barren and couldn't have any kids, and the Lord blessed her to conceive and have him, and she told her what to name him, because back then, your name was whatever Dad's name was, so his name should have been Bar Zacharias or something, and his name was given to to the mom to say he's gonna be call him John, and he's gonna proclaim my son. And the same thing, it was like Jesus, his mother was a virgin, but the angel spoke to him the same way. It's kind of that same blessed special event that you don't see all the time. So it's like their connection, and they were told what to name him at the same time too. So it was like God sent John to tell about Jesus, and then God sent Jesus to tell about himself, basically. So
I think. I kind of think about how John. Obviously, he saw to it that John was born, but just the way he lived, he was different.
peculiar.
Yeah, he's very peculiar. I think I had a part to play with it, but I think it also is like kind of an example to us on on. Well, I guess I would say because like I think for a lot of times I think about people who were alive during this time and how they had the I don't want to say luxury, but I guess the luxury of seeing Jesus do things he did. So like believing in our minds is easier because you're seeing it. You know what I'm saying? You're not having to trust. But I think John is kind of in a similar boat as us, but almost flipped because he's telling people about somebody that they haven't seen him yet. So you're like, who is this guy you talking about? Yeah, you're talking about this guy. He doesn't. Where's he at? And so I think just kind of seeing how much he was willing to sacrifice his life to proclaim the or to make the way for Christ is kind of an example for us on the flip side.
Yeah, it made me think about like how like we talked about. I mean, we all know like we said, but like God has like a specific plan and a purpose for like everybody's life. You know what I'm saying? And I think sometimes we get caught up into we come up with our own plans for ourselves, for our kids, and whatnot. It's like, man, your plan can be like in your mind, it can be like, man, this is a great plan, but if it's not the direction or the plan that God has for you, then it's the wrong plan, no matter how. You know what I'm saying? But I just think like what you saying like about John, it's kind of he was definitely like unique, but it's just he didn't allow. I think sometimes we can allow. We like the only. I don't know if somebody said earlier about being the only light in the environment. Sometimes we can kind of, when we are that light, we can kind of start fading. You know what I'm saying? Like you'll see them bulbs, like them switches. You can like dim their light down a little bit. I mean, it'd be like when you like in this environment, your light can be like that bad boy is like that bright white the bulb that says. Then when you get like in certain environments, it's like
Put the shade on
it, hit that dimmer switch, and in reality, I think God wants that light to be like on, like stay on bright, because and the crazy thing about it is that it has there's the ability. If we're plugged in, then like one thing for certain is like God's power is like it's unlimited. So it's like bulb ain't gonna like it's not gonna blow up, or it's not gonna like run out of. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh man, my bulb's getting weak. It's like, nah, if it's plugged into God, and it's like, so we have the ability to whatever situation we're in, it's like to stay that same brightness.
One more thing, when you were talking about John the Baptist, and just like when we discussed like why he chose him, it's like, was there anything special about him? And that made me think of like how he chooses to use whom he chooses, and it's like it's not about having a high status place, because he ate locusts and wild honey and wore sheep or whatever, camel skin. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like he wasn't dressed up like, 3-piece and whatever in purple, whatever the people who had money and status, is like it's not like that. We have to worry about, he can use us because it's just little old me, humble me, whatever, we don't have to attain, certain status in like society or whatever, but because he can use anybody, and of course you can read through the whole Bible and he used everybody, X everything. So it's like, and that gives us kind of encouragement, just like, okay, well, he can use my little light, because like you said, that little light in the dark place is like a beacon, because like for me, somebody who can barely see at night when it's dark, one little light, it just like you might as well have runway lights on, when I see it, because it just so big and blurry to me, and it probably just a little dot to everybody else, but to me that's like, and I think that's what makes me think of how he can use just that little.
And I think it's kind of a good analogy right there. Is the more darkness you're in, the more significant that light is, right? Like if you're in a room full of lights, like if you turn off that light over there, it's not gonna make any difference because there's a bunch of lights.
You turn them all off.
But when you're in the midst of a bunch of darkness, that one light is a big deal for everybody that's amongst the dark.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so what is it? Why do you think, how I want to ask this question, like, do you think, do we get in trouble? Well, I'm having trouble posing this question, but like, when we're in different, talking about being in different environments and being the light and all this, and it's like, do you think the church as a whole does a good job of like uh, teaching people that, like, man, God used a lot of people that were just common, what I'm saying? Like just common people. They weren't scholars. They weren't, all this, by society standards, they weren't like, anybody special by society standards. You know, and I just wonder, like, do we do a good enough job, like, teaching people that, like, like, man, it doesn't have to be, because sometimes I think, like, for me personally, I think, like, man, a lot of times, and not just spiritually, but it's like a lot of different things in life, I feel like, man, I'm not qualified to do that. I'm not smart enough to do that or whatever enough to do that. It's like, and I think that mindset comes from like, well, I'm looking at me. I'm not looking at like, what I'm saying, like what God can do through me. So it's like when I'm trying to do things, if it's me trying to do it and me, whatever it is like, well, I'm limited on what I can actually do on my own. But when I just be like, you know what, I really just want to be a vessel or a conduit to let this God just like flow through me and like just completely, what I'm saying, like get myself out of the way. And maybe that's another thing about it now. Maybe that's another reason that God says, deny yourself, man. Like, you want to take the reins and be in control. And I think to a degree is, we're taught that, like, to, especially as men, like be your own man, the long list of things, by being a man, it's like versus like, what, I'm just gonna be making myself willing and available. I don't know if that's really a question, but that's how it started.
But to remind you and to encourage you that like when you feel like I'm not adequate or I'm not whatever, remember Philippians 4:13 tells us that I can do all things in this through Christ that strengthens us. So we can do, even though I can't do nothing.
No, that's why I said when the focus is on self,
Yeah.
and I think you can. I don't say easy to get caught up in there, but I guess as the focus is continued on him, then you don't really have to deal with that. But I don't know. I just want, like, going back to the question I was kind of posing this, like, do you think we do a good enough job of teaching people that? And I had this discussion with somebody a while back where we were talking about preaching, and like there's nowhere in this book where I see like where you have to be like, I gotta go to seminary, I gotta get all these degrees, I gotta do all that. You know what I'm saying? Because although that can make me out definitely, I mean, it can give me a lot of knowledge without a doubt, but I think knowledge without wisdom or without being led by the spirit, it's like it does not have the same power in it. You know what I'm saying? And I think about people that were back, the people that did not, most of the time, the people that had issues with Jesus were the ones that thought like they were, what I'm saying, they had it all squared away. You know what I mean? And the people that were like not so squared away, it was like, man,
I think a lot of to answer your question is the answer to your question is no. Are people taught that you don't have to be this whatever status to make an impact? But I think a lot of that is because, or for that to be achieved, I think it requires, like we talked about, is transparency and vulnerability. Because I think the best way for someone to feel that way isn't someone to tell them that, but to experience it, right? Like for whatever the person that has whatever title in the church to be open to sharing with them and letting them know that I go through some of the things, but I'm able to whatever. Just kind of one-on-one breaking it down, letting them know that like I'm human too. I go through struggles, but you know, I know that God still has a great purpose for me. And I think if I don't know, I guess it's like I don't know. I mean, I think that's part where like the body as a whole, each of the parts is responsible for, I guess, kind of doing that with one another. Because for a pastor to say, you don't have to be a pastor to make an impact, it doesn't mean that. You know what I'm saying? I guess it wouldn't be perceived the same as someone else saying it. But it made more sense in my head, but I don't know.
I see what you mean.
I feel like the experience too makes it more. It's like you said, you can go to seminary and have all this knowledge, but to actually have a personal testimony and some experience behind it to share. Like I can tell you, you know, XYZ steel toe boots are the best, but if I never wore them, I'm just saying what the box says. You know, I can't, you know,
I have not experienced.
I haven't experienced it personally, but I believe they might, you know, they probably have some good boots, you know, and you get them and you're like, these things, you know, whatever. But it's like, I don't have the experience, but nobody can refute that. You know, you can say, you know, everybody on TV says their vehicle is the best and they won all the awards. But until you experience it yourself or you see somebody who's had firsthand experience, then you can trust that. You say, oh yeah, I have that in my house now, or whatever. You know, you like you when you go to buy something, what's the first thing you do? You do some research and then you go, what's the reviews? Who likes it and who doesn't? You read what they say because you're wanting their input. And so our witness is our testimony of what happened between us and God. Nobody else can say, oh, that ain't true or that's not right because that's your story. So that's why it's so important to share your story, whether it's, you know, I did a lot of this and now I don't anymore, or it might have been the Lord kept me from a whole lot of stuff, and that's still a good, you know, testimony. So it's all important.
It
That kind of made me an analogy again in my head is like, because it's something that I've recently had a conversation with somebody about. It's like the person that goes to college for 4 years, but they have no experience. And they know all this stuff that they were taught.
They did the job.
But there's a person who didn't go to college, but they worked and they learned and they did all these things, that experience. Yeah. And so when it comes down to who's up for the job, the person that has the education can say, I have this, but okay, well, what experience do you have to show me how you applied it and used it? It's like, well, I don't have any yet. But the person who's been working, that's when they gets the job because that the people can see, oh, okay, you're not just telling me something that someone else told you. You're telling me something that you experienced. So that's kind of that's
Let's see. We on question number 6. So let's talk about verses 9 through 13. It said, John contrasts Jesus' rejection by the majority with his reception by a few. Have things changed today? Why or why not? And what does it tell us about the condition of the human heart? So I'm gonna read. While everybody kind of putting their thoughts together, I'm gonna reread verses 9 through 13. It says, "There was the true light, which gives light to every man coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. But as many as received him, to them he gave the right to become children of God, to those who believe in his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God." So the first part of that, like, when it talks about Jesus' rejection by the majority and reception by a few, have things changed today?
I think a lot of people are, obviously, a lot of people are deceived into that. You know what I'm saying? I think if you asked a bunch of people, you would feel like, oh, it's not a majority, or a majority of people that do. But I think it's the one that jumped off the page is in verse 9, which says the true light. And it says he was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. And so it's helping me think about like I'm taking a picture. If I'm taking a picture in here, it's gonna look a lot different than if I take one outside with the natural light. And I think it's like a lot of people have this distorted image of what they think they're or where they think they are in their walk or what they think Christ is or what he represents. And I think that's kind of where the truth is.
Why do you think it's distorted?
Because it's not the true light.
But I mean, like, okay, I see what you're saying. Never mind.
You know, what's distorting the vision?
Yeah.
I mean, kind of like the scripture at the beginning. I mean, it could be false teaching that looks one way, but it's not the other, or just really, I think the biggest thing, at least amongst my generation, I feel like the biggest thing is everybody has their own interpretation, which they identify as their truth, and it's okay for you to have your truth and me to have mine. But the book says completely otherwise.
Just like I was saying too, like he was saying that his own, like Jesus was rejected. They rejected him, and they knew of all of the prophecies from the Old Testament, and they still, rejected him. And like even now, we still have prophecy
being fulfilled.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And even through Revelations or whatever happened, and it's still it's just like it's just like again from the same way they did then, they're doing it now. And I think it's just like it's like a battle within themselves. When some people want what they want, even they know what might be the truth, they still battling with themselves because they want what they said they want. You know what I mean?
Before the first answer, since the answer was no, it made me think of, it's like have anything changed? And no, and I
the names.
It made me think of Ecclesiastes 1:9, which says, "The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done." It says, "And there is no new thing under the sun." So I feel like it's like back then, he preached and they, some of them listened and then some of them fell away, but they didn't, it's always like the ones right around you. You think, I was performing miracles and doing all this stuff, and they still, didn't get it because you can't see the forest for the trees. And now today, it's like even after all the, like you said, all the prophecies that have been fulfilled and whatnot, there's still people that are gonna, that you can tell them to your blood face, they're not gonna receive the gift of salvation, and they choose to reject the one, only the one who can promise them life eternal. And thinking about the heart, that's the same question, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to.
You going to
Am I
Jeremiah?
going too far?
No, that's right. Number 6.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I had written about 4 scriptures, but Jeremiah was one of the reason why is because the heart is deceitful, and then it made me think of to go back to Genesis, since we're in Genesis 6 and 5, back before when the Lord got ready to destroy the whole world because their hearts were evil continually. That's all they were thinking about, and it's like now. It's how much more wicked can we get? They just keep thinking of something different, and then the last one was I couldn't find where it was, but it speaks about it in John 12:37-40, talking about how the hard-hearted. That's what they are now. It's like their hearts are hardened to the truth. They don't want to hear it because I want to do my own thing. This is my truth. Yeah.
I'm going to read Romans chapter 1. I'll start reading at verse 18. This is because people don't believe God is a God of wrath, but he's for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like a corruptible man, uh, and birds and four-footed animals and creeping things. And then verse 24 says, therefore God gave them up to uncleanness uh, in the lust of their hearts, to dishonor their bodies among themselves, who exchanged the truth of God for the lie, and worship and serve the creature rather than the creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. And that just like so speaks to like today, and it's kind of like it's, and like she was like, there's nothing new under the sun, but it's like the more man, it's like the more you read the word, it's like, it's just amazing how just, it's kind of like, because you can read it, but like when you're reading it to receive, not reading it to like, because some people read the Bible to like, they trying to find like flaws or something, but when you read it, man, because you're realizing that, man, this is like man, I need to eat, or man, I'm thirsty, I need to drink. And, it's just like, if you've been away from the word for a minute, it's like if you've been, you dehydrated, what I'm saying, and just getting like, just that small passage there, man, it just like your levels just start like, what I'm saying, just start rising and stuff. And it's the same way, just like you could have been starving and ate them for like 2-3 days, what I'm saying, you like, and you get that word, it's like, it's amazing how just, when you're reading the word to receive it, actually receiving and believing that it's going to make a difference in your life, an impact in your life, it just, and it's hard to, one of the hardest things for me is to understand is how people that can be in church for like years, what I'm saying, can read this book and be like, well, it's 2020, and just trying to start like either change the word or, watering it down, or just being like, well, it doesn't apply anymore. And I one thing I always say, like, I love like how with the word what God does, because, you know, uh, Revelation, Revelations 22:18 says, for I testify to everyone who hears the words of the prophecy of this book. If anyone add to these things, God will add to them the plagues that are written in this book. And if anyone takes away from the words of the book of this prophecy, God shall take away his part from the book of life, from the holy city, and from the things which are written in this book. I love the Bible because, like, there's no loopholes. Like, God has everything covered. Like, he takes away, just like in Romans where he said, like, you see somebody like, because he said, like, what verse? I think it's verse 20 said, even the turn upon God, so that they are without excuse. And that's how at the end of it all, for everybody that's ever been born into this world, it's like, God is like, no excuses. He's like, because everybody's been afforded the same opportunity to know him. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, but it boils down to like, well, because we can be sitting here, we can listen to the same, listen to the same word and everything, but you could have one person like, man, I'm receiving this, I really need to hear that person just like, kind of like, I hear what he's saying and it sounds good, and it's like, but it's kind of like we always talk about the application of the word, like putting the word into action, putting it into practice, because it's kind of like what you said, like with the light bulb. The light bulb just, if I got a light bulb just sitting over there and we sitting over here in the dark, then and just it's not gonna do any good unless we take it and like put it into action, and but it's just kind of sad though, like I said, that there seems to be um I don't know, a distorted word, or a lot of false doctrine and false what people believe about just what people believe about God, what people believe about salvation, what people believe about how we're supposed to live. And it's like God, he hasn't made it like, it's not like a mystery or a secret from us. It's like right, it's in black and white, but I think part of the issue is that if you don't kind of talked about a little bit on Sundays, like making time to study the word, to read the word, and making time to pray, making time to fellowship with other believers, and because a lot of times you can, if you don't, if I just go to church, I can go somewhere, and this is how people I think are like so easily led astray, because I can go to church and I've been going there for years, and I never really like, all I believe is what the preacher's saying. I have not like, if he tells me to turn, I may turn there, I may not. And my defense is that, well, Reverend such and such as, or pastor, whatever, said this is like, and that's fantastic, but it's like, man, if he's not preaching or teaching what the Bible says, then the reality is that he's wrong. That's just reality, And the Bible talks a whole lot about false teachers. The Bible talks a whole lot about false doctrine for a reason. You know what I'm saying? I think the only way to know false doctrine or false teacher is to know true doctrine. You can't just know that by, there's only one way to do it. You know what I'm saying? There's only one way to do it. So
To add to just a quick point about when you were talking about like how we can all be in a room and hear the same word, that just kind of reminded me of the parable of the sword in Matthew. I was like, the reason why everybody doesn't receive that word is because of the conditions of our hearts. So if
Right
you
to
got
the
the thorny heart or rocky
The ground.
soil,
Yeah.
or you got a fertile heart, you're gonna receive it and say, yeah, you're that one. That was for me, Or if you're one with thorns or whatever, the cares, the birds come and take it. That's the world taking the word out of your heart, because you think about, wait a minute, is he almost done? Because I gotta go do such and such. You already got other things, worried about it. So that's just what it kind of popped in my head, thinking about how people are, you don't get the word because you let some other thing distract you, or no, I'm gonna be stony. I'm gonna be. I don't want to hear that right now. I'm doing what I want to do because that's just me. Whatever. So, but yeah, it's all about the condition of the heart.
Jeremiah 2:21 and 2:35. 2:21 says, I have planted you like a choice vine of sound and reliable stock. How then did you turn against me into a corrupt wild vine? And this is God talking to the Israelites. And then verse 35 or 34, then 34 and 35 says, he's talking about all these things that they've done. It says, like, all the verse 34. His on your clothes is found the lifeblood of the innocent poor, though you did not catch them breaking in. Yet in spite of all this, you say, I am not innocent. He is not angry with me. But I'll pass judgment on you because you have said, I have not sinned. I just kind of thought, like, the first one kind of describes, like, that's got to be how God feels like. Like, especially the people that claim to be believing, like, I planted you, I put the best, the kind of thing like a garden. I got the best seeds, I got a brand new, I made sure everything was just right, and it still went bad. Like, how did that happen?
His
So I think it's just kind of like you said, everything, nothing's new under the sun. So like these same frustrations he had back
He's still, yeah.
thousands of
But
years
he's
ago, he's still
frustrated
like,
because he already knows.
Well, yeah, but still, I
you know what I'm
mean-
saying? We can't frustrate God, but
Maybe frustrated is the wrong word.
I think,
but-
but yeah, you know, it's like okay, he sees the same. Here we go again, but not really. And that's the good thing about God. That it's like you know the grace of Him. That yeah, because you know, like I said, He already knew at the beginning that we're gonna need a Savior, so He had already put that plan in motion before it even began. So, but He still created the garden, still created man, and watched we even you know. Probably in hopes that, you know, I want them to praise me like creation does. You know, everything is going up.
The birds, the
Reaching,
flowers.
you know, everything is, you know, looking to the Lord.
I want to go ahead and stop at question number 6 for tonight. We'll pick up on next Wednesday with number 7. Hopefully we'll have the system up and going. We can all, if we're not here, interact through the system. But anyway, that'll conclude our lesson for this evening. And before, no, you